Hello everyone, coming back at you with another 10 underrated Commander cards. We have some pretty awesome ones to go over, some new, some old. Let's jump right on into it. The first one we have is Tormod's Crypt. I feel like a lot of people know about this card, but not a lot of people are willing to play it in Commander. And a lot of the decks that you are willing to put it in are usually going to combo with Cheerios, such as Joyra, Weatherlight Captain, or even a Teshar Ancestor's Apostle, getting zero-costed artifacts in those decks. It's going to make it easier for you to combo. But Tormod's Crypt is awesome in really any deck you want to put it into. It's colorless, it can fit into any deck, and it's awesome graveyard hate. I would say it's just as good as Bojuka Bog, which probably sees more play than Tormod's Crypt. It's easily recurable, you can bring it back, do it all over again, hit someone else's graveyard. I absolutely love this card. I think it is criminally underplayed. And then we have Spawning Pit. I love sack outlets. I love something that I can use in response to get rid of all my stuff before my opponents want to exile them. That way I can ensure that they're in my graveyard as opposed to just getting exiled. I can't touch them again. Spawning Pit isn't as good as something like Altar of Dementia when it comes to a win con, and it's not as good as Phyrexian Altar when it comes to mana advantage. But you do have a 2-mana sack outlet, again colorless, can fit into so many decks, and you get charge counters on it. You remove 2 charge counters from it for 1 generic mana, and you get to put a 2/2 spawn artifact creature token into play, which is really cool. If you like tokens, you'd probably love this card, or if you're just looking for a very cheap budget option because you can't afford something like a Phyrexian Altar, but you really need another sack outlet, Spawning Pit is something that I would highly recommend. The next we have 3 white cards in a row, but the first one here is Tithe. 1 white mana, instant speed, you get to search your library for a plains card, and if a target opponent has more lands than you do, you get to search your library instead for 2 plains cards, and it's any plains card, so it's not a basic land. You can get a Temple Garden, a Savannah, whatever you need. I would probably compare this closest to Ash Barrens, a card that's also going to let you get a land. However, that is only a basic land, and while this is just in white, like I just said, it's any plains card, so you could play this in a 2-3 color deck and get shock lands or dual lands. But I would highly recommend it for mono white because white always seems to have something wrong with lands. Very similar to red, you have to depend on mana ramp, which isn't always the most consistent thing to have, so the more of these that you can get, the better. Just a fantastic card, and I think that every mono white deck should be playing it. And then we have a newer card here. We have Breitling. Very similar to ones like Aetherling, Morphling, and Torchling. Really weird creatures that don't seem to see a lot of play in Commander because they're kind of weird, unless you really love their activated abilities and can copy them. Use something like Marcel the Pretender. These don't really see play anywhere else, but Breitling is a very good white creature. It's only 3 mana, so not as expensive as the other ones, and you get kind of the same deal here. You get good activated abilities that can give keywords. You have Vigilance and Lifelink, but you also have the ability to dodge removal, board wipes, anything like that. You can keep replaying it, and like the other Ling creatures, you have a way to manipulate power and toughness during combat, so you have a really good blocker, or you have a way to deal more damage. Very solid creature, not going to fit into too many strategies, but it's weird enough to where I think if there's a certain commander that comes out in the future, a lot of people are going to be looking for a Breitling. It's a cheap creature, decent keywords, decent activated abilities all around. Maybe not an auto-included every single mono white deck yet, but to me it definitely could be in the future. And then we have Nevermore. If you have a friend who insists on playing the same asinine commander over and over again, Nevermore is the card for you. Because while it may not be practical for every single deck, if you're in a specific matchup, whether you're playing competitive EDH or you're just playing someone who wants to play with something like Grand Arbiter Augustine, be as annoying as they possibly can be, Nevermore is a card for you. It can definitely save you, can definitely keep you from losing off a first swing with Narset and Light and Master, keep them from getting their entire deck going with extra turn spells, extra combat spells, because those commanders can be frustrating and they can end the game really quickly. So having a Nevermore out there is very good for you. Now I must say, I was in a 5-player game of Commander before, and there were 2 Derevi players. This was a while ago. I'd say it was like 4 years ago. Derevi is a pretty good, pretty powerful Commander option, but if you do Nevermore, never a Derevi, because it just doesn't matter. Next card is Fel Spectre. Kind of Liliana's Caress the creature, but also ETBs and forces a target opponent to discard a card. So right off the bat, you can force them to lose 2 life. Fits in perfectly where Liliana's Caress Megrim would also fit in, which is most Nekusar decks. Or it would fit in well with any deck that is capable of forcing your opponents to discard cards, using something like a Windfall, Wheel of Fortune. Doesn't necessarily have to be Nekusar, it's usually the best place to put it though. So if you're looking for more consistency and you love those kind of cards, I can't see why Fel Spectre would be a bad inclusion. The next card is Razza Ket's Right. I love these cycling cards because worst case scenario, it's just 1 black mana and then you draw a card. And yeah, I do understand that 5 mana for a tutor isn't very good because Diabolic Tutor doesn't see that much play the more competitive you play in EDH. It's just a drag having to pay that much mana to get a card from your deck. But the upside here of being able to discard it and draw a card, if you don't have the mana to pay for 5 and then do something else, it's usually good to just have a cantrip there. It does replace itself either way if you decide to tutor something else or just discard and draw a card, which is why I do love cycling cards. But it usually comes down to, is this going to give you more of the same? Tutoring, if you have better tutors, you're probably not going to want to play Razza Ket's Right, but if you are a budget player, I highly recommend Razza Ket's Right, because demonic tutors, super expensive, vampiric tutors, super expensive. We have tutors that they're probably never going to reprint, at least anytime soon, like Imperial Seal. So having this, it is 5 mana, but come on. And then the next card we have is Insurrection. I've talked about this card a lot in my deck tech videos, but I don't see a lot of people playing it. It is a whopping 8 mana, but it's 8 mana. In a lot of situations, this is a win con. You just gain control of all creatures, untap them, they gain haste until end of turn. It's a mass active treason effect that also does the same thing for your creatures. So if you just played a creature, doesn't have haste, it's going to gain haste. You can swing with more power. If you're playing an aggressive token strategy, or your opponents are playing aggressive token strategies, this is perfect for you. You get a massive army just to swing with. Your opponents have nothing. So while you may not be able to swing out and kill all of your opponents, you can definitely do it and kill off one opponent. Most of the time that tends to be what happens. So why wouldn't you want to play this? I think in mono red you don't always have the best win cons. So especially in mono red, if you're not playing Insurrection, I don't know exactly what you're doing. Red is all about outnumbering your opponents, being as aggressive as you possibly can. So the only reason why I think people wouldn't play it is because it's 8 mana in red. But if you're able to pull it off, you're probably going to win. The next card we have is Noxious Revival. This card does see a bunch of competitive EDH play, but it doesn't see a lot of casual EDH play. It's Phyrexian mana in green, so you can either pay 1 green or pay 2 life, and you get to put whatever card you want to from your graveyard on top of your library. You can do the same thing for your opponents as well, which is a big reason why this card is underrated. It's awesome graveyard hate. If your opponent wants to recur something from a graveyard, you just target it and then put it back on its owner's top of their library. But most of the time I find myself using this on a card in my graveyard. If I have a demonic tutor in there, I can just put it on the top of my library, use it all over again. It is instant speed for just 2 life. You don't have to pay any mana. Super cheap. One of the fewest cards that is as cheap as it is, does exactly the same thing pretty much as an Eternal Witness, but sees a lot less play in casual EDH than Eternal Witness. And then the last card we have, speaking of Eternal Witness, is the Snake one, Skullwinder. 3 mana, and instead of just doing it for yourself, you have to choose an opponent and then they get to do it as well. So you have the downside of giving an opponent something that they want back from their graveyard, but you do have the upside of group hug. If you are a huge group hug player, I highly recommend Skullwinder because sometimes this is exactly what you need. Sometimes you don't need a board wipe or anything that can deal with the current board state, but you would rather have something that your opponent can have so that they can answer something in the future. Like, let's say your opponent has a bunch of counter spells in their graveyard. You know someone else at the table is a much bigger threat than they are, and they're probably not going to counter any of your stuff, especially if you're the one giving them the counter spell. I don't understand why they would. Skullwinder is a great way to make an alliance, and if you're playing politically like I do, whenever I play group hug, this is a perfect card. You get something back from your graveyard, so it's still just as effective as Eternal Witness, just as abusable. If you want to use the ETBs, something like a Deadeye Navigator, you can still get a lot of stuff back from your graveyard with it and abuse it, but you do have the downside of giving an opponent something back from the graveyard. So when it does come to abusing it, it's not as abusable as Eternal Witness, but still very effective in a multiplayer game. Exactly what you want to do. Form an alliance. Even if you're not playing group hug, playing politically is still a wise thing to do in this game. You have multiple opponents. They have threats on the board. maybe you can't deal with alone. So I highly recommend it. Even if you want to play Snake Tribal, it's still a funny card. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this video of 10 underrated commander cards. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know if you play with any of these cards and how they play for you. I'm going to try to put out more of these underrated commander cards videos in the future. But for now, you guys have a wonderful day. Avoid here signing off. See you all next video.